Hi guys, this is going to be an LS Fest highlights as well as a Trans Am unexpected differential rebuild and a Sierra wheel hub swap, or an attempted wheel hub swap. We're in the attempted stages at the moment on that. But yeah, so LS Fest was a very cool event. I had a really good time there. Met up with some buddies, and it was great. We got a little house, little rental house, Airbnb. That was fun, and yeah, it was cool. LS Fest itself was very neat. A lot of cool cars, a lot of cool events. I'd recommend going back. You know, I'd go back. It was about a 10.5 hour drive for me, but I'd say it was worth it because it was pretty cool. So I'd like to go back next year if I could. I'll throw some highlight clips, little videos that I got from LS Fest. I'll throw those at the end of this video. There's just a few cars going around the little autocross track they had there, but it was kind of cool. You might like that. But yeah, so that was LS Fest. Really cool. The differential blowing up on the way down to LS Fest. Not so cool, but that's what I get for road tripping a 21-year-old Trans Am. He's locking them up there a little bit. So here's a Trans Am. It doesn't look any different, which is good. Because when I went to LS Fest, I took this car. It's about 600 miles one way. And when I got about 3/4 of the way down there, the rear end had started making noise. And at that point, I was past the point of no return. So I continued. And when I got to LS Fest, I changed the rear end fluid. Long story short, I had a bearing fail within the rear end, and it sent metal through all throughout the rear end. So I changed the oil, put really thick oil in it when I was in Kentucky, and then drove it 600 miles home, and it did okay. It was making a ton of noise, but it drove fine. And I got it home. Basically, I don't have time to rebuild it, nor do I have the skills or tools to rebuild the rear end. So I took it to my local shop, and they did it for me. They seem to have done a very nice job, and they did it very quickly. and I put 390 gears in the car. Car stock had 342s, so now we're 390. They adjusted my speedometer and everything for me. That was nice. And there we have it, 390 gears in the Trans Am. It was an unexpected upgrade. I wasn't planning on doing that right now, but the 10 Bolt had other ideas. But I put like 7 miles on the car since I've got the 390s in it. Motive says I have to drive 500 very lightly, so for the break-in. So I plan on doing that. I'm going to follow the rules with the break-in. That's what I did with my clutch, and that's worked out nicely. So I'm going to do that with the gears as well. We can go check out the carnage in the garage. Alright, so these are all the bearings and seals and the original 342 ring and pinion from my 10 Bolt. I believe this is all factory original equipment. I don't think it's ever been opened or redone before. The car had some of them were labeled Koyo bearings. Yep, this is labeled a Koyo bearing. I'm not sure if that was the OEM bearings or not. I kind of thought they were Timken's, but this particular rear end had Koyos in it. So if somebody in the comments section would confirm or deny if that is the original bearings that were in the rear ends from the factory, that would be interesting. Long story short, the ring and pinion look to be, I would say, totally fine. I don't see any chipped teeth. Don't see any like cracks or anything. Everything looks okay for having 106,000 miles on it. And I was looking over the bearings here, and the roller bearings didn't look too bad. This is one of the axle bearings. I believe that would be the carrier bearings, and then this would be either the head or the tail pinion bearing, and then the other pinion bearing is on the other side. That's the interesting part. But everything's looking okay here. Nothing's looking too bad. I don't think any of the seals were failed. I had just had the one pinion seal replaced in May, so I was kind of mad that this failed now because I had just had the pinion seal done, but now it's done again, along with all new bearings, new gears, and new seals for the axles. So what failed was I was going down the highway, and I was just cruising. I wasn't like launching the car or anything, and the car started to roar, make a nice howling sound from the rear axle, and it turns out, I believe, 4 of my rollers on the axle bearing came out. As you can see here, there's 3 spots open there and 1 spot open there. So I believe 3 of these rollers came out of the axle bearing and got shredded up by the gears, and this sent metal all through the rear axle because my cover has a magnet on it, and it was all full of metal, and the fluid was all full of glitter, and it was just a whole metal fest. So this wasn't really the problem, though. It was the initial problem. The problem that was causing this roaring sound was actually this here, which I believe is the pinion bearing. And you can see that nice carnage there. That's really cool. So what happened was, at least my theory, is 4 rollers come out of the axle bearing, get sent throughout the axle, get nice and munched up, sent metal everywhere. This chunks of metal ruin the pinion bearing, which I believe this is the pinion bearing. I'm not 100% sure, so you could correct me on that. But this one's labeled a Timken. So I don't know. There's Koyo and Timken in the rear end. There was before. Should be all Koyo now, but yeah. So this is these 2 are the culprit there. A failed axle bearing and a real beat up pinion bearing. Now it's all new. Should be all fresh. Hopefully it should last me a little while. Please. But yeah, that's what's been happening with the Trans Am. So we can start with the Sierra. It's as you can see, has no wheel at the moment. So I was taking the tractor up north. As you can see, it's still in the bed. Going down the highway, and I started to hear the wheel hub noise. Now, I wasn't too worried about it because the passenger side had done the same thing a year ago. And I replaced the hub, and I did to do a couple little tricks to make it happen. And tried the same tricks on the driver's side, and it's not working. Because as you can see here, the hub actually broke apart. So passenger side, I was able to knock its stud out and use a screw to basically pull the hub out of the car. This car, or this side, I tried the same thing and it's pulled the hub apart. So this portion here is remaining on the vehicle when it's not supposed to be. So I'm working on trying to cut it off with a grinder, but my air compressor was getting a little hot, so I give it a break. So I figured I'd make a little update video. So that's what's going on with the Sierra. Working on cutting the wheel hub off so I can replace it. Fun stuff.